Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Knock them out, man.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark. I'm an alcoholic. It's great to be here tonight. My sobriety date is April 14th, 1988. I haven't been to the fellowship for probably about 5 years. I was over at Silver Creek last time I was there, so it's great to be here. I would like to thank the committee for giving me this opportunity. I would like to thank ML for the assistance with the lodging. I'd like to thank Bob for being a kind host. We got together for a meeting last week and broke bread together, and I think I'd like to thank Shannon for asking me to do this. You know, about 8 months ago, having just a beautiful, beautiful walk through this gorgeous reserve in Australia with Suzanne and Shannon. Can you believe that? And we're walking, having this great time catching up. We had the opportunity, my family and I, to live over there for a year. We were there for the entirety of 2008, and some of our dear friends came to visit, and Shannon and Suzanne came, and we're walking along, looking at the kookaburras and the cockatoos and watching for kangaroos, and Shannon says, "Can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Sure." She said, "Would you be a speaker at the Fellowship of the Spirit next year?" And I was like, "Yeah, like a workshop type thing, sure, no problem, you know." She said, "No, like a featured, it's like a Thursday night speaker." And I was a mess, right? I mean, I went right, you know, if you have a friend and you want them to take a good look at their program, ask them to do something like this. You know, I'm 21 years sober at the time, living the dream, and I'm thinking, I don't have anything to share. What could I possibly share? And, you know, it's been great. It's been great to... It was great that I had 8 months to try and forget about it and say it's down there, it's out there. But here it is, and it's been a gift to help me focus on my program. You know, I'd like to share a story. I had a great sponsor in Phoenix named Jimmy, and he shared this story with me. And I've decided, you know, we don't need those 20 questions to decide if you're an alcoholic. If you get this story, you make it. So Jim's this great guy. He looks like Huey Lewis, just real handsome, great guy, about a 2 handicap golfer, richer than anything, drives a convertible Porsche, just as, you know, active in the program, sponsors a dozen guys, fabulous guy, and he's downtown doing something in Phoenix and stops by a 7-Eleven not too far from the bus station. And this old wino walks up to him and says, "Excuse me, sir, you look fairly prosperous. I'm wondering if I can ask you a question." Jim says, "Sure." He says, "You know, I've got a daughter who lives in Dallas, and she just had a child. It's my first grandchild, and I'm wondering if you would loan me $20 so I could get a bus fare to Dallas." And Jim, you know, he's no pushover, and he says to the guy, "Well, you know, you look like a drinking man to me. And having been one myself, I can spot them pretty good. And I'm a little nervous if I give you this $20 that you're just going to drink it up." And the guy looks at him and says, "Oh, no, don't worry. I got drinking money." Don't need the 20 questions, do you? You guys are in. You guys are in. When I first started to think about what I might want to share with you tonight, it was really difficult. I had a hard time getting started with it because it's so difficult for me to really get excited about sharing my drunkalog anymore. And it was kind of strange to have that realization. And not because it's not important, and not because it's not important to share, and not because it's not important to remember, but because it's not exciting to me anymore. You know, when I first came in here, that was really exciting stuff, those crazy days. What's exciting to me now is recovery and the joy in life, and this is exciting to me. So if I'm a little bit abbreviated in that, please forgive me, but I really want to focus on the solution and the recovery that I've experienced in this program, thanks to people like you. But I'm sure after a very few minutes of my story, there'll be no doubt that I qualify for this deal. You won't be wondering. So what it was like. I came out broken. I came out busted. You know, I came into a family, upper middle class family in north suburban Illinois, Jewish family, which is why we connect so well, Gary. I can understand why that makes total sense. And I was looking for, I just wanted the breast. I just wanted the breast. And back then, in '59, they didn't do that. They gave you the bottle. Well, here it is, I didn't get the breast, so I ended up with the bottle. And, and I was always looking to get fixed. I had a big sister, and I wanted her to fix me. And clearly, my mom was not available to fix me, and my dad was very busy, so he was too busy to fix me. And so I just knew I was broken, and that's how I started it off. And I kind of went through. The cool part is about 5 or 6, I discovered girls, and I was not one of those. I like girls right off the bat, and I wanted to play doctor and play house and do all that stuff. I still do. Look at the front row here, you guys. It's great. So I just kind of went along like that, I was a pretty happy kid until I'd get in trouble for busting the piano, or, I got caught stealing money out of my mom's purse. And fortunately, I didn't get caught stealing money out of the maid's purse. But you got to wonder about somebody who's stealing money from their maid to go buy chocolate, because that's what I was doing. I would steal money from her purse, go over to the old folks' home that was right behind our house, and buy chocolate and get altered. Chocolate alters, right? I mean, we know. And that's what I was doing until, I had a big sister, and big sister had good connections, and she hooked me up. She hooked me up early. And at 13, she turned me on to marijuana, and didn't really do anything for me at the time. And so she took me to a party with her, where after, I think it was 6 or 7 Mickey's Big Mouths, I ended up under a bush in these people's front yard, just puke drunk. That was my first drinking experience. A couple months later, I had unrestricted access to wasn't champagne, it was cold duck at a bar mitzvah. And I ended up blacked out, passed out in the bathroom. My folks had to come pick me up. Never, now, and there's some more stuff coming, never did anybody question that I might have a drinking problem. Just blows my mind. My kids aren't going to be so lucky. And then through teenage years, it was just kind of a series of misadventures. There was a group of us who used to break and enter into people's homes when we knew they were out of town, and steal their liquor and any cash. And we took jewelry sometimes, and we didn't there's a bunch of Jewish boys in Highland Park. I mean, it's not like we knew where to go pawn it or anything. We just took it. And the way we got caught was 2 of the guys decided it would be a good idea to try and walk out of a Sears Roebuck with a color TV. And they got caught, and the cops sat them down and said, "We know you've been up to these other things." And they said, "Yes, we have. And here's the names of the guys we were with." And so, yep. And the whole focus of that adventure, and this tells you a little bit about my family, was how do we get them out of trouble? How do we hire the lawyer? how do we, clear the way? And, that's where it came from. At 15, I got busted driving my dad's car. 15's not legal driving age in Illinois. It wasn't at that time either. And, and all I could, I pulled in the driveway, and there he was, and I threw it in reverse naturally, and he was like, do not effing do that. And all I could think of was the bottle under the front seat, Never looked, never came up, and I was able to go get the bottle later that night and sneak it up to my room. At 16, Dad came home and said, I've got an opportunity to move to Denver, Colorado with work. Would you like to? And we'd been traveling to Colorado for many summers from Chicago. I mean, if you know Chicago, getting out of there is like the best thing that can possibly happen. And so I was like, yeah, I'm in. Geographic, great, I'm gone. These people, because, all my friends' parents weren't letting me hang around anymore, and, they kind of knew my rap, and it wasn't, so I was glad to go. So we pulled into Denver, and they're unloading the moving van, and this kid walks by, and he's kind of got, baggy, scruffy jeans with holes in it and long hair, and I was like, you're my new best friend. And, that afternoon, we were over to his house getting high, and I got hooked up in Denver right away, I was able to disappear. I went to Thomas Jefferson High School and kind of disappeared and didn't go to class very often, and, barely eked my way through. I went up to college at University of Northern Colorado, where they on a trimester, so it's 15 credits per try, and I left there after a year with a letter from them saying I need not return, and I had 3 completed credits out of the 45 that I took. I did have some very good connections in Boulder at that point, and I'd made some money in the process. But that we drank. That's what we did up there. We drank, and we drank to excess, but I was still managing it pretty good, and that was part of the upbringing. The belief that I have to manage it, My friend, I heard Scott Redmond died. Is that? Yeah, that's a sad thing. Scott said, he used to say in his talk, Jewish people can't be alcoholics, it might dull the pain, thanks for letting me borrow that, Scott, but, that was the deal. I had to still keep some kind of facade like I had it together, so, they decided the best thing for me would be another geographic, and they sent me to Israel. That worked out really well. It was a college program where I could get some credits because, I got to still keep going to college. So they put me on this kibbutz, this communal farm over there, and I walk up, and there's there's the people that live there, and then there's this little group of houses with the volunteers, the traveling folks, the Aussies, the South Africans, the Irish, the Dutch, and they've got their own little place, their own little kitchen, and their own little bar. And I was home. I mean, it was just heaven. We get up at 5 in the morning, go work in the fields, and get done at 1 o'clock, and 3 o'clock we're in the bar playing darts until 10, 11, 12 that night. And it was just perfect. And I learned how to drink rot gut brandy. It was just the nastiest stuff. Started having some blackouts there though, and started getting in trouble, and dated one of the kibbutz girls that I wasn't supposed to, and they kind of made it clear it was time for me to head on out. And so I came back home and tried to reclaim some credits and get going at Arapahoe Community College, so maybe I can get back in the Colorado school system. And I did that for a few months, and I said, you know what? America sucks. I'm out of here. I'm going back to Israel. I'm going to my roots. I'm going to move there. I'm going to emigrate, make aliyah. And and I went back to the same kibbutz, and they took me back, fools. And and I hung out for another five months or so until I severely injured myself one night, and we had a big drinking day. We made this trash can full of grain alcohol punch, and I was falling down drunk, and I stepped on a bottle and cut my foot to the bone, and I had to ship on out and come back home, and then I came home and I kind of straightened out a little bit. I went out down to Fort Lewis and Durango and kind of got myself through there, and just was a daily daily user, you know. And I played varsity tennis down there, and I would get high before every match, and you know, and I found some guys to drink with down there, and they drank like I did, and they used to go to a little bar where they had spin the wheel, and you could get the 10-cent kamikazes, you know, and we'd go, here's $10, you know, that's 100 kamikazes right there. That was a good night, you know. Yeah, so just kept going, and at 22, the summer before my senior year, I was at home, had a big party the weekend before at my house. My folks were out of town with my sister and I. She was 26 at the time, and I took off to go up to Boulder and was up with my girlfriend in Boulder and got a phone call, and my sister had cardiac arrest through a combination of bulimia and a virus that she had, and they told me to come on down and meet them at the hospital, and I knew on the way down she wasn't going to be alive, and I was right. And you know, at that point, I processed it much later, but at that point, I had nothing. All I had was an open license to drink. You know, we went back to the house, and people would bring me booze and bring me drugs, and I could just stay in my room while my folks did the morning, and I just drank myself silly. You know, and it worked. I mean, it worked for me. Alcohol worked for a long time. You know, it filled the hole. And, you know, I made my way back down to school, finished up my senior year on May 6th, came home to Denver, and on May 13th, my father died of a massive heart attack on the racquetball court. And at that point, any relationship I had with God, because we called it God in the Jewish religion, was done. I was done. Rabbi walked into our house, and I threw him out. And I'm still not talking to that man. He was inappropriate, but I was done. And it just opened the door for me. And from there, it's really started to sink. But through that, I still had to keep that facade. I still had to pretend I was doing okay. And I hid my drinking and drugging a lot from people. And you know, I went and got a job, and I didn't like that job. So what's a good upper middle class guy do when doesn't like, or girl do when you don't like a job? You go get a graduate degree, right? You know? So I didn't like working, so I went back to school and hid out there, and I got an MBA from DU. And at the end of that, I got this wonderful, incredible job offer from Conoco Oil down in Houston. And it was like big bucks. This is 85, and they're offering me like $60,000 a year starting, and car and travel and all this stuff. They were going to move me down, and it was great. And got a call, and they said, you know, we'd like to offer you the position. The only thing we need you to do is come down. We'll help you find a home, and we do need you to take a drug test. And I was like, I think I can be down there in about 28 days or so. Because I wasn't sure, but that's how long I figured that it would take to get the THC out of my system. I could still drink during those 28 days, and they were good with it. Like, I just said I had a bunch of stuff going on, and you know, they were good with it. And I don't think I smoked any dope during that time. I know I drank a lot, and I think I did coke, but it was like early on, so it was probably gone. But I got a call a couple days after I came back from doing that test and finding a nice little house down there, and they said, sorry, we're going to have to rescind the offer. You came up with a positive THC level in your blood. And I remember getting a beer out of the fridge, going out to the backyard, sitting out there with my dog, thinking, it's just not fair. I didn't do anything wrong. They're terrible. Those mean people taking that away from me. And there was a little bit of in there, this is my problem, but I wasn't ready to go there. And so I accepted a job. I kind of kept one on the back burner because I was worried about that drug test thing with Payne Weber, and I became a stockbroker, which is a great job for an alcoholic because you just got to be a star for a while, you know. We're all good at being stars for a little bit, right? And so I was a star for a little while, and then the market closes in Denver at 2 o'clock. So, like, you're done at 2. You can be at the bar at 3. and found some guys that drank like I drank, and we'd go have a few, and then I'd head home, and I knew the drinking was getting bad. I was having some troubles with the drinking and kind of needing it, and so I said, when I go home, I'm only going to have one drink at night, because I had 4 or 5 at the bar before I get there, and one drink, and that was a 32-ounce tumbler that I would put some ice cubes in and fill it up with Dewar's. No water. Thank you very much. And most nights I wouldn't even finish it, so I really wasn't that bad, right? Because I'd pass out before I got done with it. But stuff started to happen. The depression started to come. The knockdown, drag out, couldn't get out of bed for a couple days. I was seeing a psychiatrist because my mom was worried because I had grief issues after losing my, sister and father, and it started to get financial problems. I was making all this money as a broker, and I was in debt and kind of in trouble that way. And relationships, they weren't going very well, as you can imagine. I didn't want anybody to come into my house for very long. Like, you can come over for a while, but then you got to leave so I can finish the job here. And at 28 years old, I hit rock bottom. And the reason it did, and maybe some of you can relate to this, the booze quit working. It quit working, damn it. I mean, if it kept working, I'd have kept going, but I couldn't get drunk. I couldn't, I could sometimes pass out, but it just quit working. And the best description of how I felt then was I was riding my bike the other day up Turkey Creek Canyon there, and I rode by where an animal must have died in the ditch. Have you ever gone by where there's a dead animal rotting in the ditch? That fetid, just absolutely rotten. That's what I felt like in my core. I was just, and so the best solution I could come up with was suicide, right? Because I didn't know any other choices. I did not know the words Alcoholics Anonymous. I had no idea it existed. Nobody mentioned it in my life and didn't even know it was out there. And so I bought a gun, and I started making a will, which changed on a daily basis. I did this over a number of days, you got to understand, I didn't want to rush it, but I keep changing the names on the will, and, depending on who pissed me off that day or who didn't return my call. And there were 2 times that I got close, 2 times that I had it in my hand and was ready to go. And I had a sweet dog. His name was Bubba. And he was, what a alla dog he was. He'd get neglected. I'd take off, I'd be gone for a night, sometimes 2, and wouldn't come home and have to fend for himself. And he had a neighbor next door that he'd jump the fence and go to their house if he needed to. He was a great husky shepherd mix, just a beautiful dog. And both times I got close, he'd come through the dog door. I'd hear him come in, and he'd come to sit down right in front of me and just look up at me with those beautiful brown eyes and just say, what about me? Because I had isolated myself enough that it could be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days before somebody might come looking. The job would want to know where I was, but friends and that weren't coming around. And, and bottom line is I didn't, obviously. So I left work one day, early in April, it wasn't the 13th, April 2nd or 3rd, and checked myself into a treatment center and told somebody for the first time in my life all I'd done, all the using I'd done, the daily usage since I was 13, the daily drinking, the quantities, the commitment that I had to alcohol, and they put me in the locked ward. They put me in the locked ward. I think they thought I was a threat to myself or something. But I was able to talk my way out. I called my psychiatrist, told him I was in there, and he came over. I stayed one night. He came over the next day, and we sat down, and I told him, I don't know what the hell I told him, but you know what? He let me out. He was not a very good doc, apparently, because I should not have been out and about. But what happened is then I got myself out, and I wasn't quite done, but I was mostly done. And I called my mom, told her what was going on, and being a good mom, she had now moved back to Chicago, and she flew out to Denver, and being a good Jewish mother, she took me shopping for treatment centers, okay? So we went shopping. And Sounds fun. I was a mess, obviously, at this point. And we walked into Gateway, and I don't know if Gateway still exists. It's somewhere east Mississippi and towards Aurora or something. And I saw the 12 steps for the first time. And I went literally running out of there. Literally, I saw the God stuff in there, and I went running. I'm not like kidding running. I ran from there. My mom had the car, and I ran home a couple, 3 miles. I like to run. It was good, therapy. And so I was able to run, and I ran home. And on my way home, I stopped at Keg Liquors. I lived in University Hills. I stopped at Keg Liquors, grabbed a bottle of Smirnoff. I didn't even like vodka, but I grabbed a bottle of Smirnoff, and I drank the entire thing in the block and a half between Keg Liquors and my house. And I came to sometime later that day, passed out in my puke. Avi could have asphyxiated there. In my little office that I had in this house, with the entire office destroyed. I mean, shelves off, pictures shattered, an antique desk in pieces. I don't remember doing any of it, but that was my last drink. And that was April 13th, 1988. I went back to Bethesda as an outpatient. I wasn't going to be inpatient, outpatient. And I just got very fortunate and hooked up with a group that took good care of me. So that's what it was like. What I'd like to share with you now is a gratitude list I've written of what it's like today. And then I'll go back and share with you how that came about. Gratitude list. I am so immeasurably grateful to Bill W. and Bob S. and all the people, including you, who have followed their lead and maintained this life-saving and life-creating program. I'm grateful to have been given access to a higher power, an access that is available to me 24/7, 365, an access that has never denied me from without, but only from within. I'm grateful for the men and women of AA that have shown me how they follow the steps to freedom, not just from alcohol, but from the physical, mental, and emotional anguish that was for so long the primary driver of my existence. I am grateful to my incredible wife for her partnership and for the beauty she brings to my daily existence. I'm grateful for my wonderful children for being the shining beacons of my life. I'm grateful for my home group, the Saturday morning men's acceptance group, to have a place to be every weekend and for the deep level of sharing and recovery that happens there. Grateful for Gary for introducing me to that group 6 years ago or so. I'm grateful for my sponsor and for the men who privileged me with sponsoring them so we can continue to stay sober and help other alcoholics to recover. I'm grateful to my family of origin, which aside from a few cousins, aunts, and uncles is my ever-supportive mom, for allowing me to remain in their lives and in fact unconditionally supporting me even after all the havoc I wreaked in their lives during my first 28 years on this planet. I'm grateful to them from my friends for their consistency, unruffled presence, and availability, both for me to share my struggles with and victories, and vice versa. I'm grateful to my employer and students who give me a purpose in my daily life and endless opportunities to be of service and practice the principles of this program. I'm grateful to have been given the gift of a special family of choice here in Colorado. I'm grateful to have a mind and body that continue to perform reasonably well as the years add up, and they're adding up. I'm grateful to have a comfortable home and the means to provide for my family. And lastly, I am grateful to the Scots for creating the game of golf, where I get so much opportunity to practice fellowship, integrity, and humility. Here's what happened. I got into that rehab, and they started putting us in meetings, and I hooked up with a group of people that I could relate to. And I've seen that happen so much in this program. If we connect up early, we stick around and we run with that crowd, and we go to meetings and we go to conventions and we check in with each other and we check in on our progress on the steps, and that's what happened for me. Now I'm going to go through the steps and kind of tell you how they have related to my sobriety in here. Step one, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. I never had a problem admitting powerlessness. I did that at 14 years old in my room, getting high by myself, looking out at the electrical wire outside there, wondering what would happen if I grabbed that. I knew I was powerless over this stuff. I knew it had me. I knew I was going to do it every day for as long as I could. It's the arrogance of thinking that I can manage well that has to get smashed. It's that arrogance to think that I can manage it. And I had that arrogance for a long time. Once that's smashed, and God, if I ask, God is quite willing to smash that. God's more than willing to show up and do that for me. Then I get that freedom of the first step. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Where I continue to get stuck on this step is that I keep hoping that some form of human power can fix me. I continue to seek that out. Fix me, fix me, fix me. I have to, look, it says in the book says probably no human power could relieve our alcoholism. Probably. It said probably. So, there's a chance, right? You haven't yet. The only thing that has relieved my alcoholism is God and a relationship with a higher power and following the steps of this program. At 2.5 years, I got to a point where I'd been relying on the group for my higher power. That worked, and I was told that was okay to do. And at 2.5 years, I was abandoned. See, when I got sober, I was in a relationship with a woman, an old friend. I knew her for many years and cared for her very much. And she cared for me too and was supportive in my sobriety. The only issue was she was married to my cousin. And it wasn't good at the end there when he's calling my house in Denver from Chicago saying, "What is my wife doing there?" She left him and moved to Denver and moved in with me. And this is all in early sobriety. I didn't get married until 13 months, okay? My sponsor said you don't do any big decisions first year, right? So I waited to 13 months to get married. We got married, and at just over 15 months, we moved up to Crested Butte and started a business. At 2.5 years of sobriety, she was having an affair with another man, and I was left alone. And I was alone. The group couldn't cut it anymore, and I had nothing. And suicide once again became an option. And I actually sat in the garage with the car running for a while. Nothing happened. I didn't even get high. So it must have been lousy good ventilation in there or something. So, but I did it, knowing she was going to show up soon, right? So I could get the drama points. Didn't work. February 1993, I'm up in a meadow at 10 o'clock at night at 10,000 feet outside my home in Crested Butte. 20 degrees below zero, beautiful starry night. The snow's 6 feet deep. It's so crusted you could walk on top of it, and I'm out there with my dog, and I'm just on my knees screaming, why? And it happened. And I got a voice. And it was because that's how I want it, and it's going to be okay. And I don't know if it was internal or external or fantasy of the brain, but that was my burning bush, and I bought in. And I got very active in the program in Crested Butte. All 10 of us, we'd meet 3 times a week, and God, we knew each other's stories inside out. Now she's going to go on to this part, right? And there's that horse part over there, yeah. And but we loved each other, and we helped each other, and we had people come, visitors would come into town during tourist season, and they'd come into the meeting, and we'd say, "You talk, we want to hear what you got to say." And there was great sobriety up there and great people, and I had a great sponsor that took me through the steps for the second time, and I got a new and different freedom from that. And it was just, again, another disaster turns into a miracle. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. First requirement, my sponsor's out there somewhere. I can't make eye contact with him, but he said this to me about 30 times over the last 10 years. Are you convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success? And I'm rarely convinced until I get beaten down into submission. I have to give up on self-propulsion. That's it. And God will make that possible for me. And that's what it says in the book. God makes that possible. And it happens regularly as soon as I invite that in. The part that really works for me in that step is God is the principal and we are his agents. And I'm a teacher and I work at a school, and I came to education from the corporate world. And in the corporate world, when your boss tells you to do something, you do it, right? It's pretty straight up, you corporate people, right? In school, when the principal says to do something, teachers think they don't have to do it, that they can argue with it and have shared decision making, and it's the craziest thing. When my principal says to do something, I do it. It's you have more experience, knowledge here than me. I'll just do it. And if I do it and it doesn't work, I'll tell you about it and we'll talk about it. And that works for me. He is the principal. We are his agents. And then the promises that follow in that third step are just a new employer. Provide what we need, peace of mind. Oh God, that's all I've ever wanted, right? That's all I've ever wanted. So I'm very fond of the third step. The only problem with the third step is once we get through that, we have to do the fourth step. And early in sobriety, that fourth step, which is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, was really scary. And I know that, and I relate to that. And my first time through it, that little group, that little rehab group, we took each other through. And second time I did it in Crested Butte with a beautiful, beautiful man. And, it wasn't that bad. But what I found now, thanks to himself, we call him himself, my sponsor today. I don't know if he's the most amazing spiritual man in the world. Certainly the most amazing spiritual man I've ever met. When he calls our house, his name shows up as his last name and Christ, because his first name is Christopher, but there's only room for Christ there. So, there's too many coincidences there for me. It's so cool that Gary's up here. I remember in a meeting asking once, it says in our book, we have 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, self-pity. And I asked the question, I bet you remember this, is it 100 of each or 100 total? Because, I figured 100 total, 30, 40 years, I might be able to knock those off. But he assured me it was 100 of each, and I probably have more. So, yeah. So, 10 years sobriety. I'm living in Golden, Colorado, married to this beautiful woman, working on trying to bring children into our family, have this pretty schmick corporate job where I get to work out of the house and go up to the mountains to these resort properties once a month, and I'm so miserable. Oh my God, I hate the job. I hate most of you. I hated obviously myself. I was just miserable. There was nothing happening, and we were fighting pretty good, my wife and I, and I'd been checking out this guy, this Christ guy, and been checking him out for a couple years. And I went up to him and I said, I think I need to ask you to sponsor me. And he said, I've been waiting for you. I've been just wondering how long it was going to take. And God bless him. We got into the steps, and I always wanted to be a teacher. But growing up as a young Jewish man, there was very few options for me. It was doctor, lawyer, or incredibly successful businessman. Those were my options. And, and whether that was true or not, I don't know, but that's what my mind said. And we started working the steps with the possibility that maybe I'd become a teacher. And it was in this 4th step and the form that Chris introduced me to, where we got down to root causes and conditions. And this form is not just what we had in the book, but it takes the book and takes us into more detail. And many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with it if you're in the Denver area. And I think it might have been Don P. that really pulled that together. And it got down there, and it opened the door for me to go ahead and say, you know what? I want to be a teacher. Mom, I want to be a teacher. And I had thank God, a supportive wife that said, we can deal with the pay cut and go do it. And from the moment I got through those fears, as a result of doing this inventory process, because that's where it comes out, getting down to those root causes and conditions, finding out the historical basis for the fear, how self-reliance has failed us, and then how God would have me be, and walking in that direction and saying the prayer and asking God for help to do that. It was like the yellow brick road opened up. And within a year, I was teaching in a high school, and within 2 years after that, because of a set of circumstances of which I could not have possibly imagined, I was making about equal amount as I was in my big Schmidt corporate job as a teacher. Year after that, I got to be a golf coach and a teacher, okay? And I mean, coaching's cool, football, basketball. Golf coaches is like the cool. Like we get the kids to the golf course, and we get them all warmed up, and then we go play together, the golf coaches. This group of golf coaches I hang with, we travel together, we play poker together, and the kids go play behind us because at the time we weren't allowed to talk to them during it. So, best job in the world. I get to goof around with high school kids every day, you know, and that's all I've wanted to do was play. I love to play, and I get to do that now, and help some people along the way and be of service. This key's been the step to unlocking amazing changes I've seen in people that have worked the steps, and particularly this 4th step in depth, you know, including some people you may know around the metro area. There's a firefighter today that was 8 years ago was a pretty lousy window salesman, and today he's a firefighter with West Metro Fire Department, getting ready to take his lieutenant's exam in a few months. You know, there's so many other people. There's even like a conference chairperson that has worked the steps this way, I believe, possibly. You know, and so I'm grateful to have been introduced to that. And if anybody's interested, I brought a couple copies of that with me, and I'm glad to share that with you if you haven't been exposed to that before. On to step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. I love the 5th step promises. I think they are just so marvelous, and I'll share them with you in a moment. But the book also says, if I don't take this vital step, I may not overcome drinking. Well, there you go. I better do it, huh? And sharing myself with another human being in this way, that's the bond that we form together when we share ourselves in this way. And I share, you know, I share about the time in Israel when I was kicking down people's doors at 3 in the morning because I was in a blackout drunk, and my sponsor comes back and shares a similar experience in his college days or something like that. That's the bond that gets formed when we do the 5th step. 5th step promises, once we have taken the step withholding nothing, we are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We began to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we've begun to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. Isn't that why we sign up for this deal? Isn't that why we walk in the room? Sure was for me. 6th step, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Am I ready to have God take it away? Am I ready? Yes or no? If I am, I say the 7-step prayer. I had the opportunity to do this Tuesday night with my sponsor on the phone after I wrote a fear inventory about coming up here and sharing with you guys. And he walked me through it. We know the issue I'm dealing with now, and he said, are you ready to have it removed? And I said, okay. Because I know it's not like removed and you just happy, removed and emotional torrents pour out. I mean, it's, it's not tiptoe through the tulips. And I did it, and I cried, and I said the prayer again, and I cried some more, and then I sat down, and this flowed out of me in, 45 minutes. So, am I ready? That's the question. Humbly asked him, step 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. Best story about this is I used to play poker with a group of guys. And it's just, again, it's so cool that you're here because Gary's one of the guys. And I used to be kind of snarky with my friends. It was, it's 8, 9, 10, 11, 10 years sobriety. And, it was that way to knock you down to build me up. And I'd take a shot here and there. And it was, all in good fun, and we're buddies, and they didn't like it very much, and they got to the point where I kind of got called on it once, and I went home that night, and next day I called my friend Big Doug, and I said, Doug, I hate doing this. I can't stop doing this. And he said, I don't want to hear your whine. Quit doing it. Quit doing it. And I said, I don't know how to stop. He said, just stop. Don't do it anymore. I was like, wow. All right, try that. And I'll tell you from that day to this, I have not been snarky to my friends. I don't think so. We have adult discussions sometimes, but that snarkiness does not exist anymore. Step 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. I have the list from my 4th step, and I could just go ahead and do that. I've got to review that with somebody. I've got to go over that with somebody because I don't have a clue. I'll think I owe somebody an amend, and my sponsor will say, no, you don't owe them an amend, but you owe this person an amend. So I need that guidance to do that. And became willing, that's the kind of the rub, huh? We got the list, but becoming willing, sometimes we get stuck there. But here's what can happen when we do make that amend. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. I think of steps 1 through 7 is cleaning up my stuff, getting right with God. Steps 8 and 9, getting right with the world out there that I did damage to. And, when I left Payne Weber, I got kind of a forced amend. I was doing some tricky stuff, and the Securities and Exchange Commission was looking into it, and Payne Weber was looking into it, and I got to make a $35,000 amend to about a dozen clients after I left there. And just so happened that one of those clients lived in Crested Butte. And I did talk to some face-to-face, and I wrote them all a letter. But this client I needed to go see before I moved there to Crested Butte. 15 months sober, and I'm about to go move there, and he lives there. I'm about to open a business, and this guy's going to bad-talk me, and the business is going to be bad, and they're going to kick me out of town, and it's a little town. So I was encouraged to go up and speak with him. So I went up there, and his name was Steve, and I asked for an appointment with him, and we got together, and I said, I have something I need to talk to you about our experience when you were my client at Payne Weber. And he said, do you play tennis? I said, excuse me? He said, do you play tennis? You kind of look like a tennis player. And I said, yeah, I actually used to play in college. And he said, that's so cool. We don't have enough tennis players up here. I can't wait till you get here. We'll play tennis together, okay? And I said, but I need to talk to you about what I did. And he's like, go ahead. And so I told him and asked if there was anything I could do. And he said, yeah, play tennis with me. And I was like, turns out Steve's a pastor. Steve was a pastor. He was a referral from somebody else, and it was a small account, but I did him wrong, and we became great tennis buddies. That's making direct amends, and I had many experience, and I had some other experience. Was like, yeah, okay, thanks, goodbye, and so they're not always going to be like that, but that's what can happen. Step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, properly admitted it. This is a tough one, isn't it? When I'm diligent with step 10, my world moves in a positive direction. When I'm not, I end up back at the first step. I end up back at the bedevilments, looking at how my life went awry. And I'm grateful to say it's gotten a lot better. It's gotten so much better. I couldn't go 3 days without being in conflict with another human before. Now I go like 4 days. No, weeks maybe. Weeks, it's possible, I don't know. I'll have to think that one through. That might be podium exaggeration, but it's definitely gotten better. How can I best serve thee? Thy will be done. That's a real easy way to go through the day. And I'll share about that in just a second. One of my favorite parts of the 10th step is it says I can exercise my willpower as much as I want along those lines. I love exercising my willpower, right? I got lots of willpower. I want to dominate you. I want to dominate. But if I can exercise it along those lines, that's the proper use of the will. And, it's great when I practice it that way. Sometimes I think I'm exercising my willpower. How can I best serve thee? And I'm really exercising my willpower. How can you best serve me? Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. Here's how I practice the 11th step. And there are people, probably within 5 feet of me, that practice this 11th step beautifully. I'm not very disciplined. I go to work very early in the morning because I love my job and I love to get there early. I get up at 4:30 and I'm out the door by 5. And I get to school. It gives me a couple hours to do my thing before people start showing up. And what I need to do first thing when I wake up is stretch. Sorry, I'm getting old. I'm an athlete. I play golf. I ride my bike. I run. I got to stretch. I can't just sit and pray right away. I'll be all cramped up. I'll never move. So here's how I practice my 11th step. Before I leave the house every day, I have a seat on the second step from the door to the garage where I'm going to go to my car. The second step from the door to the garage happens to be the 11th step down from our kitchen. I sit on that step and I ask for a conscious contact with God. And I get that. Sometimes it's a second, sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 30, sometimes it's a minute. But you know that feeling of conscious contact where kind of your eyes are closed and the tears well up behind it, and that's when I know I've got the conscious contact. And then I just ask for the strength to go out and do God's will that day and to be kind and loving to everybody I come across. And then I get in my car and I go to school, and class starts at 7:15, and by 7:20 I'm probably pissed off and getting in somebody's grill. But we're not perfect. It doesn't say we're going to get perfect, but that's how I practice the 11th step. And and I do read a daily meditation, and that's how I do it. And other people will do it differently, and whatever way works for you, I think is what's important. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. It's the icing, the cherry, the whipped cream, and the chocolate sauce all rolled into one right there. The 12th step, getting to carry this message to other alcoholics. That's just it for me. When I get to sit down and meet with my sponsor and talk about my stuff, and then take that stuff and go meet with my guys and talk with them, that's just the gift. And I get to go sit in my meetings and hear those guys and know what's going on in their lives and get to know them. And it's an amazing gift. The hard part for me is maintaining that true connection with my fellows out on the street. And the street's a good example of that. How we all do in the car. How'd we do in the traffic jam on the way up here today? And it's just a perfect example. And again, it's gotten better, and I doubt it'll ever get perfect, but the seeking makes it worthwhile. And I did it. Having done these 12 steps, I get to share them with other people. And that's an amazing gift. And having found these relationships and having my buddy ask me to come and do this gave me a year of looking at my program and saying, you know what, you got some work to do. Let's get at it. And graciously, when I came back from Australia, my sponsor took me back in, and we're cruising through the steps right now. And cruising's a little inaccurate. We are making our way through the steps, and I'm grateful for that. I'd like to close with a heartfelt thank you for the opportunity to share my experience, strength, and hope, and a great appreciation for the continued strength of AA. AA has not just saved this life, it has made this life an absolute joy to live. I'll leave you with this. Jim, a fellow in AA, has this saying, and I love it. In AA, we are each becoming whole again. When we come together, something magical happens, and we become holy. Thank you. Have a great conference, everybody.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.